his Saturday to come and speak with us on World Wetlands Day. Does anyone know why World Wetlands Day is today, February 2nd? So it was the date, it's probably in your talk too, though, right? It's the date on which the Ramsar Convention, this international agreement on the preservation of wetlands, entered into force. And that's an important international agreement and a good symbol of international cooperation on environmental issues, which I think is an increasingly important issue in international politics and an increasingly important focus, we hope, of Russian-US cooperation. So this event, I think we see in that same light as a chance to sort of reach out to the community of interested people here in Russia and talk about environmental issues. And maybe at the end, after you've asked all the questions you have to ask of Dr. Solokha, if there's anything you wanted to ask me about U.S. environment policy or U.S.-Russian cooperation on environmental issues, I'd be happy to try and answer those questions. And we were also joking in the back just before we came in that does anyone know what other American holiday is marked today on February 2nd? It's very famous. You know what it is? Yes, Groundhog Day, right. So you remember Bill Murray, the actor, driving around in a pickup truck with a groundhog? On this day, probably right about now, we were looking at our watches. We think it's early in the morning in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, a small town in central Pennsylvania. There's a ritual that's been going on, for nearly 200 years now. They bring out a groundhog, this Solokha, right? And if he sees his shadow, then the idea is that he will go back in his burrow and there will be 6 more weeks of winter. If he doesn't see his shadow, it means that spring will come early. Now, of course, we're in Moscow, so if we had a groundhog here and we could get him out, I think for sure he would see his shadow and go back inside, because we're definitely going to have 6 more weeks of winter. But with that, let me turn over the floor to our distinguished speaker and let him tell you about wetlands. Thank you so much for being here today.